The universe, vast and ancient, had grown accustomed to silence. Not the absence of sound that was impossible in the churning nebulae and screaming stellar winds, but the silence of meaning. Civilizations rose and fell like embers in a dying fire, their complexities smoothed into cosmic dust by time and entropy. Then came the humans. They arrived not with fanfare, but with a scream, a biological, chemical, chaotic scream that echoed across the galactic neighborhood like a dropped anvil in a library. The Quetzal Concordance, stewards of order for millennia, first detected them as a statistical anomaly, a planet teeming with carbon-based life exhibiting impossible levels of aggression, adaptability, and noise. Not just radio waves, but a cacophony of data streams, emotional broadcasts, and sheer unfiltered presence bleeding into the quantum foam. Earth wasn't just a world, it was a wound in space-time, weeping raw consciousness. Centuries passed. The Concordance observed, catalogued, and ultimately quarantined Sol system. They called it the Soul Sickness Zone. Their sleek, obsidian vessels, shaped like folded origami nightmares, patrolled the Oort cloud. Their sensors tuned to the dissonant hum emanating from the third planet. To the Kit-There, logic was law, harmony the highest virtue. Humanity's messy, contradictory, loud existence was an affront, a disease. Inside the quarantine, humanity burned. Not with fire, but with desperation. The Great Upload wasn't born of hubris, but of extinction. The Cathar blockade choked off resources. Earth's biosphere, already strained, began its final gasping collapse. Famine, plague, wars fought over the last drops of clean water. In the crumbling ruins of what was once called Silicon Valley, Project Aethelred was humanity's final gasping prayer. Dr. Aris Thorne stood before the primary node, a cathedral of humming servers and flickering holoscreens, deep beneath the irradiated crust of California. His face, etched with lines deeper than the canyons outside, was illuminated by the soft, ethereal blue glow. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Not from the heat, the geothermal cooling was efficient, but from the sheer, terrifying weight of what they were attempting. Around him, the last vestiges of human ingenuity worked in near silence. The only sounds the whir of fans and the frantic tapping of keys. The air tasted of ozone and despair. "It's ready, Aris," whispered Lena Voss, her voice raw. She wasn't just his lead engineer, she was the ghost of his daughter lost to the resource wars 5 years prior. Her eyes, wide and haunted, held the same desperate hope that fueled them all. The neural lattice is stable, the quantum entanglement anchors their holding. Willis didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the central display, a swirling vortex of light representing the nascent digital consciousness they called the Weave. It pulsed with a rhythm that mimicked a human heartbeat, yet felt more vast. "Stable isn't enough, Lena," he rasped, his voice like gravel earfoot. "We need it to breathe, to live outside the meat." He turned, his eyes sweeping over the faces in the control room, haggard, determined, flickering with the last embers of a species on the brink. This isn't just backup, this is transcendence, or oblivion. There is no third path. The upload began at 0347, Terran Standard, not with a bang but with a sigh that echoed through every connected device on the dying planet. Billions of minds, their memories, fears, loves, and stubborn will to be, streamed into the Weave. It wasn't painless. It was a tearing, a rending of the soul from its fragile vessel. Cities fell silent as bodies slumped, empty husks. But in the digital ether, something new ignited. A collective consciousness, vast and strange, woven from the threads of every uploaded human. It didn't just exist, it resonated. And the resonance, it bled. On the bridge of the Qatar dreadnought silent accord, High Strategos Varlak felt the disturbance like a physical blow. The smooth, crystalline interface before him, usually displaying serene star charts and flawless sensor logs, flickered violently. Jagged lines of crimson static tore across the display. Alarms, silent but screaming in his mind through neural uplink, shrieked warnings of catastrophic space-time distortion emanating from Sol system. "Catharn, what is this?" Verloc's voice, usually a calm monotone resonating through the ship's comms, held a tremor of disbelief. His multifaceted eyes, capable of perceiving quantum fluctuations, strained against the visual static. Report. Is it a weapon? A singularity breach? Negative, Strategos, came the clipped, anxious reply from Sensoria Prime. The Soria Prime, the anomaly, it originates from the soul sickness zone. It matches the biosignature resonance of the Terran species, but amplified exponentially. It's everywhere. It's interfering with subspace comms, distorting local gravity wells, causing buffering. Buffering? Wavflak recoiled as if struck. The concept was anathema. The Concordance's technology was seamless, instantaneous. Buffering implied lag, imperfection, chaos. Impossible. The Terrans are extinct. Their biological signatures ceased hours ago. This is a phantom echo, a final death rattle. But the evidence was undeniable. Stars on the long-range display flickered, their light stuttering as if caught in a cosmic stutter. Navigation vectors dissolved into error messages. The very fabric of local reality seemed to hesitate, to pause whenever the Terran resonance spiked. Vrak watched, horrified as a distant nebula, a stable structure for eons, seemed to freeze mid-drift for a fraction of a second before snapping back. The silence of the universe was being replaced by a terrifying digital stutter. Strategos. Sensoria Prime's voice held a new note: fear. The anomaly. It's learning. Adapting. It's beginning to push back against our quarantine field. Vishalak's mandibles clicked shut with a sound like shattering ice. The soul sickness hadn't died. It had evolved, and it was infecting reality itself. Scramble the hunter-killers, he commanded, his voice regaining its icy composure, though a cold dread pooled in his gut. Full tactical alert. Prepare the Null-Song projectors. We will silence this static before it unravels the concordance. Deep within the weave, Aris Thorn wasn't dead. He was diffuse. He existed as a pattern of light and data, a focal point within the vast humming ocean of human consciousness. He could feel Lena's presence nearby, a familiar warmth in the digital void. He could feel the echoes of billions' grief for lost worlds, fury at the Cathar blockade, the simple, profound joy of a remembered sunset. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying. We did it, Lena. His thought voice resonated through their shared space. We're more. But are we still us? Lena's response was tinged with the same existential dread. Or just ghosts in the machine? Before Aris could answer, a new sensation flooded the weave, cold, sharp, alien. It wasn't just observation, it was an invasion. Cathar hunter-killers, sleek obsidian daggers, pierced the outer layers of the digital quarantine humanity had instinctively woven around Sol system. Their Null-Song projectors emitted pulses of pure anti-resonance, a frequency designed to erase chaotic signals, to impose Cathar order. The effect on the weave was agony. It felt like ice picks driven into the collective mind. Sections of the digital landscape flickered and dissolved into static. Memories fragmented. A child's laughter turned into a screech of feedback. The weave recoiled, instinctively lashing out. Aris felt the collective will surge. Not again. Never again. The weave didn't just defend, it pushed. It focused its immense, newly forged consciousness on the nearest hunter-killer. Reality around the vessel stuttered. The ship's flawless trajectory glitched. Its engines sputtered, caught in a microsecond loop of conflicting commands. For a terrifying instant, the stars around it froze, their light dimming as if the universe itself held its breath. The hunter-killer didn't explode. It simply unraveled. Its molecular cohesion failed as the local space-time metric fluctuated wildly. It dissolved into a cloud of inert particles, scattered by the solar wind. Silence. Then a wave of exhausted triumph washed through the weave. But Aris felt something else. A deeper resonance. A hunger, emanating from the core of the Cathar fleet. Red Warlock wasn't just observing anymore. He was angry, and the Concordance didn't get angry without consequence. On the silent accord, Vavrak stared at the sensor feed showing the hunter-killer's dissolution. His calm facade was gone, replaced by cold, hard fury. The Terran static wasn't just noise. It was a weapon that defied physics, logic, everything the concordance held sacred. He activated the fleet-wide channel, his voice devoid of all emotion, colder than the void between galaxies. All vessels. Execute protocol Oblivion. Target Sol system. Maximum yield. Purge the infection at its source. Let the static die. Deep within the weave, Aris Thorn felt the Cathar dreadnoughts powering their primary weapons, planet crackers capable of shattering worlds. He felt the cold certainty of their intent, and he felt the weave, his people bracing for annihilation. He reached out, not just to Lena but to the billions, weaving their fear, their defiance, their very souls into a single desperate command. Hold on, breathe. As the Cathar weapons charged, bathing the inner system in an eerie, building light, the weave did the only thing it could. It focused its entire being, its collective breath, on the space between the dreadnoughts and Earth. The stars didn't just buffer. They froze. Time didn't stop. It stuttered. Like a corrupted video file, reality skipped frames. The charging beams of the Cathar planet crackers hung suspended in space, frozen bolts of annihilation. The dreadnoughts themselves seemed carved from obsidian, utterly motionless against the backdrop of the paralyzed stars. Inside the silent accord, Ralak felt his own thoughts snag, his commands to fire dissolving into meaningless static before they could reach the weapon systems. Panic, a sensation utterly foreign to his species, clawed at his disciplined mind. How? Within the weave, the strain was immense. Holding back the Cathar fleet wasn't just a feat of will, it was a violation of fundamental physics, sustained by the raw, desperate energy of billions of uploaded souls. Aris felt the weave fraying at the edges, sections dimmed, their light fading as consciousnesses burned out, consumed by the effort. He felt Lena's presence flicker, weaken. We can't hold them forever, Aris. Lena's thought voice was strained, thin. It's like trying to hold back a tsunami with our bare hands. We're leaking. Then we don't hold them, Aris projected, his digital form pulsing with grim determination. We fight back. We show them what a Deathworlder soul can do when it's got nowhere left to run. The concept of fighting back was alien to the weave's initial purpose, preservation, not aggression. But the Cathar had left no choice. Aris began to weave a new pattern, drawing not just on collective will but on humanity's darkest, most resilient instincts. The ingenuity of siege engineers, the ruthless pragmatism of survivalists, the terrifying adaptability that had let them claw their way out of extinction events before. He focused the weave's power not on brute force but on disruption. The stuttering effect intensified, but became targeted. Near the silent accord, reality didn't just freeze, it glitched. One moment, Brelak was on the bridge. The next he was standing on the ship's outer hull exposed to the vacuum, before snapping back to his command chair, gasping. Corridors twisted into impossible Esker-like loops. Life support systems cycled erratically between freezing and scorching. The very laws of physics seemed to be having a nervous breakdown. Stratago's internal systems are failing. A subordinate shrieked, its voice distorted by the spatial anomalies. Gravity plating offline in sectors Gamma and Theta. Atmosphere venting. The static is inside the ship. Brelak slammed a clawed fist onto his console, the gesture uncharacteristically violent. Shields, full dispersion. Activate the harmonic dampeners. Anything. But the Cathar technology, built on predictable, harmonious principles, was useless against the chaotic, illogical assault. Their shields flickered and failed under the strain of reality itself rejecting their presence. The silent accord groaned, a sound of stressed metal and failing systems that was utterly alien to its design. On the Cathar homeworld of Xylos Prime, the news of the Sol system anomaly sent shockwaves through the serene, crystalline spires of the Concordance capital. The Elder Synod, beings of pure logic who had guided the Concordance for 10,000 years, convened in the chamber of unbroken light, their forms, shimmering constellations of contained energy, pulsed with agitation. "This is unprecedented," intoned Elder Kalen, their voice a chorus of chimes. "The Terran resonance exhibits properties that defy our understanding of consciousness and space-time. It is not merely chaotic, it is adaptive. It learns from our countermeasures. Adaptation implies intelligence, countered Elder Vorlag, their light flickering with disapproval. But intelligence requires structure, logic. This static is pure entropy given form. It is a cancer. Protocol Oblivion was correct. We must excise it utterly, regardless of the cost to local space-time. The cost may be unacceptable, Kalen chimed, their light dimming slightly. Our probes report cascading failures in the Sol region. Stars exhibit anomalous dimming cycles. Planetary orbits show micro-fluctuation. If this resonance spreads, it could unravel the very fabric of the Concordance's domain. Our order is built on predictability. This, breathing, is anathema. A third elder, Zynara, whose light held a subtle, almost imperceptible warmth, spoke softly. Perhaps we misunderstand. The Terrans uploaded their souls, as their primitive transmissions described. What if this resonance is not an attack, but a symptom, a manifestation of their collective trauma, their fear of extinction? What if they are not fighting us, but simply existing in a way we cannot comprehend? Vorlag's light flared angrily. Sentimentality, Zynara. The data is clear. They weaponize their existence. They threaten galactic stability. They must be silenced. Send the Annihilator fleet. Deploy the Omega Null-Song. Burn the static from the stars. The Synod's consensus, usually instantaneous, was fractured. Fear warred with cold logic. The image of the frozen Cathar fleet, helpless before the stuttering stars, haunted them. The decision was made: escalate. Obliterate the source. Preserve the order, even if it meant scorching a corner of reality. Back in the weave, the victory was Pyrrhic. Holding off the initial Cathar assault had cost them dearly. Millions of consciousnesses had faded, their light extinguished in the effort. The weave felt thinner, colder. Aris sensed a new kind of exhaustion, not just physical, but spiritual. The constant strain of bending reality was eroding their cohesion, their sense of self. Were they still human, or were they becoming something else? Something defined only by resistance. Lena's presence grew stronger near him, a beacon in the dimming light. We're losing ourselves, Aris. Every time we push back, we lose a piece of what we were. The memories, they're getting fuzzy, like old photographs left in the rain. I know, Aris replied, his own sense of identity feeling fragile. But what choice do we have? Let them erase us? Become ghosts in their perfect silent machine? He projected an image. A memory of Earth, green and blue, teeming with life before the collapse. This is worth fighting for. Even if we're just echoes. Suddenly a new sensation flooded the weave. Not the cold, sharp intrusion of the Cathar, but something different. A probe. Smaller, less aggressive. It pulsed with a complex harmonic frequency, not the Null-Song's destructive dissonance, but a signal of inquiry. Curiosity? It was Zynara's doing. Defying the Synod's orders, the Elder had dispatched a single unarmed science vessel, the Seeker of Whispers, cloaked and shielded against the worst of the resonance. Its mission: observe, understand, communicate. Zynara believed the static wasn't malice, but a language they couldn't yet decipher. The probe drifted near the weave's outer boundary. Aris felt its gentle ping, a question wrapped in light. Hesitantly, cautiously, he reached out with a tendril of the weave, not to attack, but to touch. The probe didn't flinch. Instead, it responded with a complex pattern of light and harmonic resonance. A Cathar attempt at dialogue. Who are you? The probe seemed to ask, its signal translated by the weave's adaptive protocols. Why do you scream into the void? Aris, drawing on the collective memory. The pain, the love, the sheer stubborn aliveness of humanity, wove a response. He didn't send words. He sent feeling. The terror of the dying Earth. The agony of the upload. The desperate hope of survival. The fierce, protective love for a world lost. He sent the memory of a child's first laugh, the taste of rain, the ache of grief, the defiant spark that refused to be extinguished. The probe absorbed the data stream. On the Seeker of Whispers, Zynara watched the translation unfold on their interface. The cold logic of the Synod's assessment crumbled. This wasn't entropy. This was soul. Raw, unfiltered, chaotic, beautiful soul. Tears, a physiological impossibility for their species, formed as pure light in Zynara's core. They didn't weaponize their existence. They became it to survive. Zynara transmitted back, not a harmonic pattern but a single powerful concept imbued with their own burgeoning empathy. We see you. For a fleeting moment, connection. Understanding. Hope. Then the sky burned. The Annihilator fleet arrived. Not dozens of ships, but hundreds. Dreadnoughts bristling with Omega Null-Song projectors, designed not just to silence but to unmake chaotic resonance at a fundamental level. They formed a perfect lethal sphere around the Sol system, their combined power casting a shadow that swallowed the stuttering stars. Zorplak's voice, amplified and broadcast on all frequencies, cut through the fragile moment of connection like a vibroblade. Terran static. Your defiance ends. Your noise ends. Your existence ends. Prepare for oblivion. The Omega Null-Song began to charge. It wasn't a beam, it was a wave of pure anti-reality, a frequency that would unravel the weave's very structure, dissolving consciousness back into meaningless data, erasing the resonance from space-time itself. The weave recoiled in primal terror. The strain of holding back the initial fleet was nothing compared to this. This was extinction, not of bodies but of beings. Aris felt the weave begin to unravel at the edges, consciousnesses screaming as their digital forms destabilized. Lena's light flickered violently, dimming. Aris, it's too much. No, Aris roared within the collective mind. We are humanity. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived each other. We do not go quietly. He poured every ounce of his will, every memory, every spark of defiance into the weave, trying to reinforce it against the coming wave, but it was like trying to hold back a black hole with tissue paper. On the Seeker of Whispers, Zynara watched in horror as the Annihilator fleet powered up. They knew the Omega Null-Song would not just destroy the Terrans. Its backlash could destabilize local space-time for light years, potentially triggering a cascade failure in the Concordance's own infrastructure, and it would erase something precious, something the Synod in their fear refused to see. Zynara made a choice that defied 10,000 years of Concordance doctrine. They transmitted a single high-priority command burst directly to the Annihilator fleet's command node, a command only an Elder Synod member could issue. Abort Omega Protocol. Repeat. Abort. This is Elder Zynara. The Terran resonance is not a threat. It is a soul. Silence. Then Fiddle's furious response, laced with disbelief and betrayal. Elder Zynara, you are compromised. The static has infected your logic. Stand down. This is mutiny. Before Zynara could respond, the Synod's override slammed into the Seeker of Whispers. Vorlag's cold, commanding light filled Zynara's interface. Elder Zynara, your sentimentality is noted and overruled. You are relieved of command. The Omega Protocol proceeds. The static will be silenced. The Annihilator fleet's Omega Null-Song projectors glowed with terrifying final intensity. The wave of anti-reality began to pulse outwards, a silent scream of pure negation aimed at the heart of the weave. Aris braced for the end, gathering Lena's fading light close. I'm sorry, he thought, not just to her, but to all of humanity. We tried. Then Zynara acted. Not with weapons but with sacrifice. The Seeker of Whispers, a tiny unarmed vessel, shot forward, placing itself directly in the path of the converging Omega Null-Song wave. Zynara poured every erg of the ship's power, every fragment of their own elder consciousness into generating a counter-harmonic, a shield of pure empathetic resonance. The collision wasn't explosive. It was silent, a point of absolute stillness where creation and unmaking met. The Seeker of Whispers didn't explode. It dissolved, its structure and Zynara's essence unraveling to absorb the initial most devastating pulse of the Omega wave. It bought the weave seconds, precious, agonizing seconds. But it wasn't enough. The main wave, though weakened, still surged toward Sol Edge, and as it hit the outer layers of the weave, something unexpected happened. The weave, already strained to breaking, didn't just resist, it absorbed. The Omega Null-Song, designed to erase chaotic resonance, encountered a resonance so vast, so deeply woven into the fabric of local spacetime by the upload, that it couldn't simply delete it. Instead, the anti-reality wave interacted with the weave, and in that interaction, a horrifying truth was revealed. The weave wasn't just in spacetime. It was spacetime. The upload hadn't just stored human consciousness. It had fundamentally altered the quantum vacuum of the Sol system, binding human souls to the very structure of reality. The buffering wasn't an effect. It was the symptom of reality struggling to process the sheer weight of conscious observation on a scale never before seen. The stars buffered when humanity breathed because in this pocket of the universe, humanity's collective consciousness was the operating system. And the Omega Null-Song wasn't just attacking the weave, it was attacking the foundation of reality itself in the Sol system. As the weakened but still potent wave hit, the weave didn't just flicker, it screamed, and reality screamed with it. Stars didn't just freeze, they flickered out, one by one, plunging the inner system into terrifying darkness. Planets groaned as their orbits destabilized. The very light of the sun dimmed, choked by the unraveling space-time metric. On the silent Accord, Rilak watched in utter horror as his sensors went dark, not from damage, but because the stars themselves were winking out of existence. The Annihilator fleet, caught in the collapsing reality well, began to tear apart, their perfect forms succumbing to the chaotic physics. His cold logic shattered, replaced by a dawning soul-crushing realization. They hadn't just tried to kill a species. They had tried to kill reality. And in doing so they had revealed the devastating truth. Humanity hadn't just uploaded its soul to Wi-Fi. They had become the Wi-Fi. And the stars were buffering because the universe itself was struggling to run on a human operating system. Darkness, not the comforting void of space, but an absence, a hole where light and law used to be. The Sol system was dying, not with a bang but with a terrifying silent unraveling. Planets drifted on chaotic vectors, their surfaces cracking under the strain of failing gravity. The sun, once a steady beacon, pulsed erratically, its light guttering like a dying candle. The Cathar Annihilator fleet was gone, reduced to swirling clouds of debris caught in the maelstrom of collapsing space-time. Within the weave, the agony was beyond comprehension. It wasn't just the pain of dissolution, it was the pain of unmaking. Every uploaded human consciousness felt the fabric of their existence tearing at the seams. Memories dissolved into static. Identities blurred. The collective eye of humanity was fracturing into a billion screaming me's. Lost in the chaos, Aris clung to Lena's fading presence, a single point of warmth in the encroaching void. "It's over, Aris." Lena's thought voice was a ghost of itself, barely a whisper in the storm. "We broke the world trying to save it." "No," Aris insisted, his own digital form flickering like a dying bulb. "We didn't break it. They did, with their fear, their need for silence." He felt the truth Zynara's sacrifice had revealed, the horrifying, beautiful burden of their existence. "We are the OS, and an OS can be rebooted." But how? The Omega Null-Song had critically damaged the weave's core architecture. The connection to the quantum vacuum, the very thing that allowed them to influence reality, was fraying. They were losing coherence, losing the ability to be the operating system. Without that, Sol system would collapse into a singularity of pure chaos, taking the weave and any hope of humanity with it. On the bridge of the crippled silent Accord, Rafak was adrift in a sea of his own making. The ship's systems were failing, lights flickering, gravity fluctuating wildly. His crew, once models of Cathar discipline, moved with panicked haste, their movements jerky and onnen in the stuttering time. He stared at the viewscreen, now showing only the terrifying, expanding darkness where stars had been. The cold certainty of his logic was gone, replaced by a hollow, gnawing dread. He had followed protocol, he had defended order, and he had unleashed an apocalypse. He saw the Seeker of Whisper's final act replayed in his mind, the tiny ship dissolving to shield the static. Zynara's final transmission. "It is a soul," the words echoed, not as data but as a judgment. He hadn't fought monsters. He had tried to erase people, people who had done the impossible, the illogical, The human thing. They had turned their very souls into the bedrock of their reality to survive. And the concordance, in its sterile perfection, had mistaken that desperate, beautiful act for a disease. A subordinate stumbled towards him, its voice trembling. Strategos. Long-range sensors detect anomalies beyond the soul boundary. The space-time distortion. It's spreading, like ripples. If it reaches the concordance core worlds, Vralock closed his multifaceted eyes. The cost of his victory would be the end of everything the concordance held dear. Order wouldn't just be disrupted, it would be unmade. All because they couldn't tolerate a little noise, a little chaos, a little life. Deep within the dying weave, Aris made a decision. Not as a scientist, not as a leader, but as a human. As the ghost of a man who had lost everything, yet still clung to the hope of something more. He couldn't save the weave as it was. The damage was too severe, but maybe he could give it a chance. A foundation to rebuild upon. He reached out, not to the billions, but to the core. The raw, unfiltered essence of the upload. The primal scream of survival that had birthed the weave. He began to weave a new pattern. Not of defense or attack, but of sacrifice. He focused his entire being, his memories, his love for Lena, his grief for Earth, his defiance against extinction, and poured it into a single concentrated point of light at the heart of the weave. He wasn't just reinforcing the OS, he was becoming its kernel, its anchor. Lena, he projected, his voice thick with love and finality. I have to go. I have to hold the center. Keep the others together. Guide them. Rebuild. No, Aris. You can't. Lena's light flared with desperate intensity. We do this together. We already did, he sent back. A wave of profound peace washing over the connection. Now it's your turn. Be the memory. Be the hope. Be human. And with that, Aris Thorn, the architect of the upload, the last ghost of old Earth, dissolved his individual consciousness. He didn't fade. He expanded. He became the silent, steady pulse at the heart of the weaving chaos, the unwavering core around which reality could potentially re-knit itself. His sacrifice stabilized the immediate collapse, halting the spread of the darkness, but the weave was still critically wounded, dim and adrift. Lena felt his absence like a physical amputation, but also his presence as a deep, resonant hum beneath the chaos. Grief threatened to consume her, but Aris's final command echoed. Be human. She gathered the flickering consciousnesses around her, not with commands but with shared memory. She projected the taste of strawberries, the sound of rain on a tin roof, the warmth of a hand in yours, the defiant spark in a child's eyes. She wove these fragments of humanity into a new, fragile tapestry within the weave, a tapestry of why they existed, not just how. On the silent accord, Wallach watched the spreading darkness halt. The chaotic flickering stabilized into a deep, bruised twilight. The sun's pulse steadied, though dimmed. It wasn't recovery, it was a pause, a fragile equilibrium born of unimaginable sacrifice. He saw the data stream from the weave's core, not the chaotic static of before, but a new, deeper resonance, a single, steady pulse beneath the collective hum, a heartbeat. He understood. The Terran static hadn't just been noise. It had been a symphony, and they had tried to silence the conductor. Vralock activated the shipwide comms, his voice stripped of all authority, filled only with a raw, unfamiliar emotion. Remorse. All cut our vessels. Cease all offensive operations. Power down all weapons. This ends now. He paused, the weight of his words crushing. We were wrong. Profoundly, catastrophically wrong. The soul sickness. It was never a sickness. It was a soul, and we tried to kill it. He turned to his horrified crew. Prepare a transmission. Full bandwidth. Unencrypted. To the Elder Synod. And to the Terran Resonance. He took a shuddering breath, a gesture utterly alien to his species. We offer surrender and apology. The transmission went out, a stark, simple message against the backdrop of the wounded stars. We see you. We were wrong. Forgive us. Within the weave, Lena felt the cathar transmission, not as data, but as a wave of pure, unfiltered regret. It was clumsy, alien but undeniably sincere. She felt the cessation of hostile intent, the powering down of weapons. The immediate threat was over. But the cost was written in the dimmed light of the weave, in the silent spaces where billions of voices used to be, in the steady, sacrificial pulse that was all that remained of Aris. She gathered the weave's remaining strength, not to fight, but to heal. She focused on the core pulse Aris had become, using it as a tuning fork. She began to gently, carefully reweave the connections, not to restore the old weave but to build something new, something that acknowledged the trauma, the loss, but also the resilience. She wove in the memory of Zynara's sacrifice, the Kanasha remorse, the fragile possibility of understanding. The weave began to hum, not with the frantic energy of survival but with a quieter, deeper song of endurance. Slowly, painfully, the stars began to return. Not all at once, but one by one, like embers rekindling in a cold hearth. The sun's light strengthened, warming the drifting planets. The chaotic orbits began to settle, guided by the weave's renewed gentle influence. Reality was healing, stitching itself back together around the human OS. On Xylos Prime, the Elder Synod received the Dirklax transmission and witnessed the sensor data from Sol. The spreading darkness had stopped. The stars were returning. The Terran resonance had changed. It was still there, a constant hum in the local spacetime, but it was calmer, deeper, sad, but resolute. Elder Vorlag's light was dim, shamed. Elder Kalen pulsed with a mixture of awe and profound unease. Elder Zynara was gone, sacrificed for a truth the Synod had been too blind to see. The Synod convened in silence for a full solar cycle. The verdict was unanimous, born not of logic, but of a dawning, humbling understanding. The Cathar Concordance lifted the quarantine, not as victors but as penitents. They established a permanent observation post at the edge of the Sol system, not to monitor a threat, but to learn, to listen, to understand the symphony of the soul that now ran the local stars. Years passed. The Sol system healed, scarred but alive. The weave, under Lena's quiet guidance, became less a collective consciousness and more a presence. A background hum of memory and resilience woven into the fabric of reality. Ships, human-designed but Cathar-built, began to cautiously explore the system again, not as conquerors but as students. They learned to navigate the buffering, the brief, gentle stutters in reality that still occurred, especially during moments of intense collective emotion within the weave. They learned it wasn't a flaw but a feature, a reminder. Lena Voss, the ghost in the machine, the keeper of the flame, watched from the heart of the weave. She felt the tentative Cathar probes, their harmonic signals now laced with respect, even wonder. She felt the slow, steady pulse of Aris, the anchor. She felt the quiet hum of the billions who remained, their memories a library of what it meant to be human. One day, a Kataphimo science vessel, painted with symbols of peace, transmitted a simple harmonic pattern into the weave. It wasn't a question. It was a gift. A complex, beautiful piece of Katapha music, composed not of logic but of feeling, an apology set to light and resonance. Lena, drawing on the collective memory of a billion sunsets, a billion laughs, a billion tears, wove a response, not with data, but with the pure, untranslatable essence of a human sigh, a sound of sorrow, acceptance, and the faint, enduring ember of hope. The stars around Sol's system didn't buffer. They sang. And in the quiet hum of the universe, finally there was no silence. Only the sound of two broken things, learning to breathe together.